Hi, everyone, and welcome to El Camino People, the podcast today, episode 64. Oh my gosh, this is incredible. It's been 3 years already interviewing amazing pilgrims and their amazing stories. And today we continue. We have a pilgrim that is joining us all the way from England. How are you doing, Carolyn? Good morning.
Good morning. Very nice to meet you.
So the Camino from England, it's one of the things that I discovered a while ago that there's, people think that pilgrims, they usually come from Germany, Italy, but England, and the whole UK and United Kingdom has a huge connection with the Camino de Santiago.
Yes, it does. It's incredible how many people I've met who have either walked or are thinking about walking. It's like a secret network.
And the story of the old men with the boats, and also the connection with music, the whole Celtic, is one of the things that in the whole north of Spain, and for me, it's just so intriguing how people, even right now that the world is, unconnecting and plugging, we're still connecting so deep, and there's so much that we have in common. That what we have, that against put us on each other.
Yes, I'm Scottish, and people said to me, when you're in Galicia, you'll feel like you're at home. And I really did. There are bagpipes, and it felt very familiar. The landscape is very like Scotland.
So what do you think? The music, Galician music, is close to the Scottish music? Is
with
the sound is similar?
Yeah, the pipes and everything. It felt very similar. And the weather felt similar.
Just the rain and the pipes and the beer.
Yes.
What else do you want? So thank you so much for being with us today, to share your Camino experience. And hopefully, I guess the whole idea of this is always that if we can motivate one pilgrim out there, one future pilgrim to go and walk the Camino, that's, the more people we get to walk the Camino, I think we'll make a better place.
I think you're absolutely right. And in these very difficult times that we're in at the moment, if there's a way to access something that's a little bit beyond this world, a little bit of a higher realm, it's the Camino. It's a way to get out of your head and into a bigger experience of the beauty of the world.
The simplicity, we were talking how everything became so simple, and you really, you focus on what is important, what is the things that matter the most. And at the end, you realize that nothing that we usually think on our normal daily basics is important, that the bigger things are usually the ones that you don't think about.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. And what you really need is so little. We're caught up with stuff. And the wonderful thing about the Camino is that stuff no longer matters. It has no importance at all. In fact, all you want to do is shed stuff. You just want to make the back lighter every day and strip down to the absolute bare minimum.
And of everything, just not for things, but for yourself. And that's one of the things I always say, that we carry two backpacks in the Camino, the physical backpack and the emotional, and we just throw things away and trade them with others.
That's absolutely right. You feel like you're shedding both physically and emotionally as you go. You just throw off all the bits that no longer serve you.
Great. You know that we always start with the 1-minute questionnaire. The whole idea is, this huge list over here. Don't worry. One side is in English, one side is in Spanish. There's a whole list. So the whole idea is I give you a minute just to give me whatever comes through your mind when I throw the question. Don't overthink. Just whatever. Some people, they just say things that they are not Camino related. Everything, of course, is Camino related, or at least that's what I hope. Okay? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go. Your first Camino.
The Frances.
1 month to walk.
40 days.
One city.
Pamplona.
One meal.
Red peppers, grilled red peppers in oil. Very simple. The best thing. If I'm on death row, it'll be my last meal.
A memory.
Having my foot bound up by a friend on the road as we walked into Lyon.
A song.
Sans plan pour moi.
A happy moment.
Arriving in Santiago.
One color.
Blue.
Omelette, with or without onions?
With.
A drink.
Cerveza.
A spaghetti with?
With garlic.
Love it. So my biggest, thing is always, I live in Pamplona. The Camino is here. I found cells all over. My friends are tired of me talking with pilgrims. I go out to to have a beer, and I just switch to a group of pilgrims. But it's always that something that surprised me the most: how people find out about the Camino de Santiago. And in your case, living in the UK, from Scotland, how did you find out about the Camino de Santiago?
Well, the first time I heard about the Camino de Santiago was when I was in university. So I was probably 18 or 19. And I had two friends who were studying history, and they had no money, but they spent a summer following Napoleon's battles through France and through the north of Spain. And while they were following that sort of Napoleonic route, or Wellington's route, they ended up on a bit of the Camino, and they walked a couple of 100 miles of the Camino and met up with some interesting people. And when they came back, they were full of stories about that. And they had met a couple of pilgrims who were doing it on horseback. And this is a long time ago. This is 30 something years ago. And they my friends ended up in a book that the people who were riding on horseback wrote about the Camino. So that kind of put the seed in my head. It was there. And then some years later, do you remember when the volcano happened and everybody was trapped?
Mm-hmm.
I was in Madrid when the volcano erupted, and my sister and I had to come back to Scotland via a very difficult route with boats and trains and buses. It felt like a real adventure to get home. And when we were traveling home, we met a woman who was picking up her husband who had just finished the Camino. And the way she spoke about it, it sounded mystical. It was the first time it had really sounded like a mystical experience. And I thought, oh, this sounds really, really interesting, something I'm interested in. And that kind of watered the seed a little bit. My nephew had also walked a short stretch of it when he was a student. And then as my children, as I knew they were about to leave school and move on to the next stage, I really felt that I needed to do something to kind of press a reset button in my own life. And this sort of memory of the Camino kept coming back to me, and it really sort of just kept making itself known to me for a couple of years until I thought I'm just going to investigate this a little bit more. And then I decided to stop work to walk. So it was a big decision to quit a job that I had really loved. But the only thing that I knew I wanted to do when I stopped work was to walk the Camino. So
was that something that did your community, the people around it, was anyone, have you talked, did you know that there was a community of pilgrims in the UK or
No.
any of the related trails in Scotland?
No, I didn't know anything about it, and I didn't know anybody who had walked it all. But there was a teacher in school who was our Spanish teacher in school who has friends in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. So she knew about it from visiting them. So she was really helpful, and she came to see me with lots of maps, and we sat and drank Rioja and planned a route. And she agreed to come with me for the first few days to go to her friends in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port and begin the walk with me. So she really got me. She helped me turn it from an idea into something that was concrete. We had maps and we had notes, and she helped. Then I did get in touch with the Confraternity of St. James in London before I left, but I didn't even know how to get a pilgrim passport. I didn't feel like there was a big network in the UK before I left. That's all grown since I came back, really.
It's incredible for me. One of the things that surprised me is how the Camino arrives into your life suddenly. In your case, that friends walking in Spain in those years that the Camino wasn't even big. That's where the Camino started. The first Sacobeo was in '93. That was when it became kind of like bigger and bigger and bigger. But the Camino was dormant for a long time. People, they don't remember that the Camino in Europe has been almost empty for a while, but it was huge in the old days. But suddenly that memory, and I don't know, we all remember that day so clear. And in your case, how you remember your friends talking to you. But what led you to finally say, I need to go, I need to walk, I need to take my time off?
I think I felt I had sort of lost myself a little bit along the way, and my work was very busy. I was a teacher and I worked in a boarding school.
Mhm.
And when you work in a boarding school, it's like 24/7. I ran a boarding house where the girls lived with me. 65 girls lived with me, and
Wow.
so it was really really busy and really full on. And my children, I had one son who was at university and two children who were at the school with me but were about to leave,
Mhm.
and my husband was working in Edinburgh, a different city, so we only saw each other maybe 4 days in a week if we were lucky, and life was really really busy. And I knew that I was a teacher and I was a mum and I was a wife, but I sort of had forgotten who I was, and I was worried that once the children, my twins, left to go to university, that I would have nothing but work, and that I would really be lost. And I felt that I needed just to press, like I said, to press a reset button. I needed to just figure out who I was if my children weren't there to define me. I was the thing that kept me sane when I was working was that I still had to feed them, so I still had
Mhm.
to stop work to make their supper in an evening, and then I continued working after that. But at least I had to stop to feed them, and I just had this fear that if they weren't there anymore, I wouldn't have a reason to stop at all. I would just keep working. Um, so the work was overwhelming, and I think I knew that I needed to change that. I needed to um, just do something in my life to just to just to simplify. I think just to make my life a little bit less complicated. And the Camino felt like absolutely the right thing to do. I can't really quite explain why. It just felt like that was the thing that I was going to focus on, both in terms of body and mind, to get myself back on some kind of track and discover who I was after the
Thanks for
last.
sharing that. Yeah, I think you hit on the point. A lot of people, they think that the Camino is that magical place that is gonna fix things. And the other day I was talking with another pilgrim, and I'm like, the Camino doesn't fix anything. It just gives you the place for you to
Yeah,
stop. No, we live in a life today that we feel so uncomfortable with the rush, with what we're doing, as you say, working 24/7. But it gets to a point that it's comfortable, and we are so comfortable with it that even if, we don't like it, we just continue doing it. And the
yeah,
uncomfortable things to say, I need to stop, and how to say, oh, I need to take that time off, when everybody around you is going to tell you, what the heck are you doing? You
yeah.
have
I
a
think
life, you have a.
yeah, my colleagues thought I was crazy. They're like, "What do you mean?" And everyone kept saying, "Well, what job are you going to do next?" And I was like, "I don't know."
I don't know.
They thought I had gone mad, which maybe I had.
I guess we are all a little mad, no? One of the things that
Yeah,
I think in the Camino, we say here, that we have an expression that say "tener a pedradica." It's been, a little crazy, but in
yeah,
in a funny, quirky way. And I guess that
yeah,
everybody that goes to the Camino, you feel so with the community, because we are all on the same point. I'm like, everybody goes with that reason. And one of the things also I truly believe is that the Camino calls you. There is one
mm,
point in your life that is like, I cannot put it on hold anymore. I don't know why, as you were saying, I don't know why, and I cannot
yeah.
tell. There's no way to explain it.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. I just felt like it was just something I needed to do, and it was a really good decision. I don't regret it for a minute.
But it's funny because you change living in a huge albergue to go to another albergue full of
Yeah,
crazy people that at least you don't have to be taken care of.
no, I didn't. Well, although we did end up, my friend and I did end up taking. I had lots of teenagers that followed us, so I suppose that's what you do. But it did mean that I was quite comfortable with sleeping. I mean, I didn't sleep in. Obviously, I had my own house, but I was very
Mhm.
comfortable sleeping communally. I didn't have a problem with that. And a lot of people say to me, "Oh, I couldn't sleep in a dormitory with like strangers and snoring." It didn't worry me at all.
Yeah, I think it's also part of the Camino. Even if you don't
Yeah,
need to, sometimes you can take a private room if you want to really take a break, but
yeah.
sleeping on the albergue it's part of the community. And as you say, as we were talking at the beginning, I remember my Camino Portuguese. I was working with these kids from Madrid, and usually, the Camino in summer is full of teachers. And there were these teachers from the States, and they were having outside, in a garden, talking with a 18 years old, with a 65-year-old retired teacher, having a beer. Where else in the world can you see that
Yeah,
situation other than in the Camino de Santiago?
yeah.
On the same level, talking as friends, not as teacher or old person or whatever. I'm like, never
Yeah.
seen that in my life.
we loved that, and I walked as we walked. We met. We hooked up with a lady called Jean who was from America, and she made friends with these young kids. And she loved that. She said at home, I'm in my 50s. I just don't get a chance to chat to young people, and that was a really beautiful part of the Camino. I thought age and where you're from and what car you drive, none of that matters.
No, we're all the same. We all wake up early in the morning. We all have to take a shower. We all smell. It's incredible. I'm like, doesn't matter your religion, your sex, your anything.
I met a German couple who said, I can't remember the expression in German, but in English it translated as, in the dark, all cats are grey.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that's a really good expression, because we're all this, we're all the same. It's our similarities that matter on the Camino, rather than the things that separate us in normal life.
So true. So one of the things also that I think, it's incredible is that the first day, you were mentioning the arrival to St. John. How did it feel for you? It's like, finally, I have all my life. I put everything on the back. My child are in the UK. I'm far away, and here I am in a journey of a lifetime.
It was exciting and kind of scary. And I also had been sort of focused on, so just to recap slightly, when I first planned the walk, I was planning to walk alone.
Okay.
And I had a friend. So when I started to train for the walk, a friend said who was the Spanish teacher, said she was going to walk the first few days. And then another friend said she'd walk a week with me. And then as we trained together, she said, I'll walk for 2 weeks. And then eventually she said, I'm just going to come the whole way with you. So there were 3 of us. We arrived in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and we were staying with my Spanish teacher's friends on a campsite called campsite. I can't remember, but it was a beautiful campsite that we were staying in. And we'd been focused on the 3 of us getting there, and I hadn't thought about it being a communal experience at all. It was really just about the 3 of us going. I think I knew very little about what the Camino was, and the fact that there would be lots of pilgrims there. I was quite naive. And at the airport, when we were standing with our rucksacks and a shell, someone asked me if I was a pilgrim, and I was kind of embarrassed. I was like, I don't know what do you mean? I don't know. I'm going to. I was really uncomfortable about it. And as someone else asked us as we got onto the plane, and my 2 friends who were coming with me were even less comfortable with that. And as we sat on the plane, my friend said to me, we're not going to all have to start singing together or something. We were terrified that this would be some sort of communal experience. And none of us were really team players at the beginning. I thought that this is an individual thing. So I was a little bit nervous when I arrived in Saint-Jean, because I thought, maybe this isn't what I was expecting. Is this going to be, are we going to have to speak to strangers? I was nervous about all of that. And of course, the first night in Roncesvalles, we were sat with on a table with lots of other people making conversation. And I thought, wow, is it going to be like this all the way, that I'm going to have to interact with strangers? And I was quite uncomfortable. But it was interesting how quickly that feeling left me. And by the end, they were like my family, the people that we were walking with. So there was a real kind of shedding of inhibitions as we walked, which is another sort of Camino lesson for me, to sort of receive people and to be open to that experience of getting to know strangers.
And how open. I'm like, one of the things that I always, in every Camino I go and walk again, it surprised me again, how people open themselves to you, and like even yourself, you open to strangers more than to your closest family. I'm like, you share stories. Everybody still is what you see is what is there. I'm like, the real you comes out on the Camino.
Absolutely, that's absolutely right. But that's quite a scary prospect at the beginning of the walk. You couldn't, if you told someone that on day one, I think I know I was like, I'm not that sort of person. I'm not going to be sharing things with complete strangers. I'm British. So,
I'm from the north of Spain, Pamplona. We are kind of like on the same level. I'm like, no, so, me, myself, and I.
Yeah. So that was a really an interesting kind of transformation, and something that was completely surprising to me, how much I enjoyed the communal nature of it, and sharing and meeting new people, and for my companions too.
One of the quotes that I read on your website, we'll be start talking later about your book and the journey how leads you into writing the book, but you quoted like, you weren't sure of the difference between a long walk and a pilgrimage. And for me nowadays, is some of the things that I still don't know. I know, but I don't know what is, the difference, and how a long distance walk became a pilgrimage, or how somebody that goes into a pilgrimage might be just a long distance walk.
Yeah. I think there was a kind of moment where I felt a sort of little click of something shifting. And we went to, just early on, probably day 3, we took a detour to a church of San Esteban, up on a hill where there's the bells that you can swing the bells, and the 2 little nuns took us up to the bell tower, and we were
that's the albergue. Oh, it's right here. They're the nuns of Zabaldica.
And the church is San Esteban, is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And I was tired because it was day 3 or whatever it was, and my the Spanish teacher friend had said, let's take this 5-kilometer detour up.
Why not?
It's like, seriously? But in the church, she gave the nuns gave us this beautiful poem, The Beatitudes of a Pilgrim. And it was really beautiful, and they were so kind to us, and they sort of took our bags off, and they allowed us a moment in the quiet to sort of recover in the church. And then when we went upstairs to the bell tower to ring the bell, and she said it takes, I can't remember, 36 seconds for the echo to come back from across the valley, and it was so beautiful. And in that sort of quiet moment in the church, it felt like something shifted, where I suddenly thought, oh, maybe this isn't just about the amount of miles we're doing in a day and how my legs feel. Perhaps this is about something quieter than that. And I think that shift took probably another week to really sort of process that actually it wasn't about, because in the beginning your body is sore, everything hurts. It feels like it's very much about the physical experience, and everybody's sort of comparing their blisters, and they're talking about their physical body. And then something shifts where actually it's not about that anymore. It's not about the distance or the wow, look what I've done today, how many steps I've done today. It's about something much more internal.
Yeah, I think that's the moment when you realize that a lot of people, it can happen anywhere in the Camino, when you realize that the journey is not to Santiago. Santiago, it is a place, and it adds a lot of meaning to it, but the journey is going somewhere else, no?
Yeah, I think so. That we followed, you meet the same people and you sort of overtake them and you slow down. And there were four Frenchmen who one of the hospitaleros called the French caballeros. And so we kind of, we were often in an albergue just at the same time as them. And one day we were kind of, I think it was probably in the second week, we were felt really fast and really fit, and I was enjoying that feeling of being, really powerful in my own body. And they shouted at us, "Slow down, or you'll miss Santiago." and I felt kind of proud and thought, "Wow, we're so fit, we're overtaking these men." And then I really thought about that and thought, "This is not a race. I'm not racing. It's got to be more about just the physical experience of reaching Santiago. The destination was not the place."
And that's incredible how the Camino, so well set up that the first day, as you say, something physical, just about being tired, yes, to get your body ready for what is coming next. That is the real walk, the internal walk, no, that we all go through. And
I think you walking we walked for 36 days, but we took 4 rest days, so we were on the Camino for 40 days. And I think your body has a really interesting I really changed the way I experienced pain. And so by the end of the walk, you really understand that pain is in your head, which when people kind of laugh when I say that now, but it really is. You do experience pain in your head. And there is a way to sort of to get beyond that. I think the fact that you just kind of keep on going. I had bad tendinitis in the last 2 weeks. My good friend Ali, who I walked with, is a physiotherapist, which everybody should walk with a physiotherapist.
Everybody should put an Italian and a physiotherapist in their team.
Yeah. And she strapped me up every day for the last 10 days. But when we reached Ribadiso, so just a couple of days out, the tape that she'd been putting on my leg just took all the skin on my leg off.
Ooh.
So she couldn't strap me up anymore. So it was pretty touch and go whether I was going to get there or not. But even with the tendinitis, there was a point in every day where I thought, I can't do this. This is too painful. And then another point where it just kind of goes, and you can just keep the pain in your head. No.
Also, a lot of people, and that's another big discussion nowadays, that the suffering in the Camino, no? Are we supposed to suffer in the Camino? It's, here in Spain, we have now that Easter is coming, we have all this, where people go walking or they flagellate themselves. And a lot of people say, the Camino, you're not supposed to suffer. But I mean, suffer means so different for each of us. And we all have the pain level, as you were saying. I have a really good friend that his first Camino was a lot of pain. But I think, the Camino he needed was that Camino. And I also know people that they left the Camino, they go home because of their situation. And that's also part of the Camino. So how did you manage all that pain and that situation after?
Well, I think what you realize is the pain is just in your body, and that there's more to you than just your body. And so it's just one bit of you that's experiencing the pain. So there's a way to kind of not quite rise above it, but to keep the pain in perspective. And I think you do, just walking through pain. I think something chemical happens where you stop noticing it after a while. You can kind of meditate through it, if you like.
Yeah, I think that's something that probably, with all the saints and all the people that has been suffering, they put you in a different state. Sometimes you don't have to be suffering. Like, there's some pain that you need to go home and you need to go to the hospital for sure. Yeah. But there's that kind of pain that usually I think nowadays we cover all our pain with things, and stuff or whatever. And
I think you're so right. And I think people feel fear as soon as they feel pain and think, I must stop because I'm feeling pain. I think that's our response, from when we're children, something hurts and you cry and your mummy fixes it. I think that actually we don't need to deal with pain like that. If you can overcome the fear and just kind of keep on going, it does shift. But there's kind of determination to keep on going has to be there, because there is an instinct definitely to stop when you feel the pain. It was interesting, and I have arthritis now, and I keep trying to get back into that sort of Camino mindset where I think this is just my body. This is not anything more than my body. It's harder in a day-to-day life to deal with pain.
And that's the biggest trick, no? How do we get all the Camino learnings and we put it on the everyday life? Because as we were saying, and like the Camino is that magical places like Disneyland, but better. But it is something that isn't true. Is that the situation is everything, and the biggest lesson that we can learn is how to take those little things on a normal day.
Yeah, I think that's right. And just to keep not to have it as a sort of it needs to be integrated into the rest of your life, the things that you've learned, and that's hard to hold on to. A lot of people describe this feeling of real kind of depression after the Camino because
they're the Camino blues.
Yeah. I was lucky that I didn't experience that. When we came back from Spain, my mum, who was ill, she was ill before I left. But when I came back, she had her cancer diagnosis, became terminal just within weeks of me coming back. So we came back in May and she died in the August. So the Camino really kind of sustained me. I didn't feel the blues. I felt that it really prepared me for the sort of hard months that came after it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that when people ask me, about Camino, the best advice that you can get is if you're doing a long distance Camino, take a couple of days to stay in Santiago. Yeah. And also walk a couple, walk till Musia, walk till Fisterra, just to walk it off, because you go through so much stuff that the impact that has, going back to normal life. A lot of people, they go to work back the next Monday or then in 2 days. I'm like, it's a lot of to go through, and it's a big change.
And people want to talk to you about it. They say, "Oh, tell me all about it." And I think it takes a while for you to process it yourself. We had that conversation with my friend Jean, who we met, who she said, you know, what am I going to say to them when they say at work, how was it? Because people want a quick answer, and it's not something you can sum up and, oh, great, we had a fantastic time. I think you have to do that. You just have to say something like, oh, great, it was wonderful. You know, we really enjoyed it. Because once you start trying to explain it takes a while to actually process what really has happened to you on the Camino.
And also, I believe that, you know, the Camino is one of those things that if I have to explain it to you, you're not going to get it. And if you already walk it, there is no need. I'm like you and I here right away, you know, that's it.
Yeah. It is a sort of it's just an intrinsic understanding. When you know.
That's it.
And then it's difficult to try and write a book about it, because that's kind of counterintuitive, because people say to me, oh, it would be a great book for people who are going to walk it. And part of me thinks, but if you're going to walk it, they need to have their own experience. They don't really need to know about somebody else's experience. You need to have a kind of your own pure experience without thinking, oh, well, somebody else had this revelation at this point. That might, I don't know, it might inhibit people.
It is true, because, you know, one of the things that I realize right now, I'm like, there's so many Camino books, there's so many Camino movies right now, there's so many Camino podcasts that at the end, even myself, I asked myself, like when I went to the Camino, I didn't look anything. It was just the not knowing, the going to unknown. And that was also beauty of the experience. But also there's things, you know, like the famous German book or the movie The Way, that has helped so many people to go ahead and suddenly say, you know, I want to walk the Camino. So right now I'm on the point, like, should I read a book? Shall I read all these, you know, incredible blogs about the Camino, discover everything? No, but also sometimes I think that there's a lot of people that they need a trigger. And if that trigger can be your book, can be a podcast, can be something, I'm let it be.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Also, one of the questions that you were saying, you walk with friends, and a lot of people, when they decided, you know, to go to the Camino, they are scared of going by themselves. But also, we have all the pure pilgrims that say that, oh, the Camino has to be walked by yourself. I'm like, how do you manage to walk a Camino with friends, but also walking your own Camino at the same time?
Well, I had the one friend who came the whole way with me, and my Jenny, my Spanish teacher friend, she walked the first 5 days. And then other friends joined us for bits of it. And my husband and my daughter were with us for the last 10 days. And it was really interesting how Ali became like myself. I didn't feel like I was walking with anyone else when I was walking with Ali. I felt like we were so sympathetic and in tune with each other, that we gave each other space when we needed it, and we gave each other companionship when we needed it. So she felt like part of me on the walk. When other people came, sometimes it felt like a kind of like our balance was slightly off. It was just we just had to make an adjustment, and we'd had a very sort of our second week was very quiet and very internal and very meditative. That was where the walk really became a pilgrimage for me. And then two very lively, bubbly, fun friends arrived on week 3, and my feeling was, wow, this feels like a lot of energy that wasn't there before. And I was a little bit worried about that, but we had a day off in Burgos together, and that was fun because we could do all the chatting and laughing and everything. And then when we began to walk, our paces were all slightly different. And the two friends who'd just arrived were fast. So interestingly, we sort of started off together, and then we separated, like we were connected with a thread, but we weren't together. So for much of the walking, from I would say maybe 4 hours a day, we were on our own. We were walking separately, but with each other in our sights. And then we gathered at the end of the
I think that's important for a lot of people. I think, my Camino family, we met on the first days, but also it will be like the day will be like, as you were saying, we'll start together. Each has their own pace. Some days you talk with one, some days you don't talk with anyone until you arrive to the albergue, but that's also part of the Camino. So even with a group by yourself,
it happens sort of almost without words, doesn't it? It's not that we never had a discussion that said I'd like to walk on my own now. It just kind of happens organically.
And if you're working, as you were saying, it was part of yourself. So you kind of know when the person that is walking close to you needs their time
Yeah.
off, or they need someone just to walk there. I'm like, sometimes
Yeah.
you don't even need to talk. You're just walking together. There's
I
no
I
need for words.
I took lots of photographs on the way, and that has an interesting effect on how you walk with people, because when you stop to photograph, I think maybe on the first couple of days, every time I stopped, they were like, "Oh, she's taking another photograph." Very quickly, they just walked on, and that was the point at which we separated. They were like, "Oh, she's taking another picture of a door."
I'm the same. Pictures, videos, chatting with the old woman that is at the village, going to
Yeah.
chat, play with the dogs, the cat, whatever.
Yeah. So that's the way that you sort of, separate out, and then you come back together when you stop for water or a coffee. It was nice.
And with a Camino, in your case, your Camino was kind of like adding different people, different stages. So that finally, when your familia gets there, and you're walking into Santiago with your daughter and your husband, how did it feel to your Camino finish with your family? Some people I heard, it's just weird when they join you because they're not part of that journey.
Well, they were really sensitive to the fact that Ali and I and Jean, who was this wonderful woman from Boston who joined us, that both David, my husband, and Connie, my daughter, were sensitive to the fact that in their mind it was our walk, and that they were just joining us to kind of celebrate the end with us. That in there they were very sensitive about that, and said, "This is not our walk. This is your walk." So actually, when we got to Santiago, they pulled back. So they were probably 100 meters behind us. So the three of us walked into Santiago. They were obviously observing us, but for us, it was just the three of us who arrived. But as I walked in, it felt to me like all the people who'd walked. I wanted everybody there, the Jenny and the people who joined us in the middle, and Ali's husband and her son had joined us in Lyon for a couple of days. So I kind of wished that we were all walking in together, but they were with me in spirit, I felt. But it was just the three of us that arrived at the cathedral together.
It is one of those moments that you think about all the people that walk with you, the people that you met, and also when pilgrims ask me, like, stay a couple of days in Santiago and go just to the Pradoiro to see and to wait for the other pilgrims to come. Because one of the things that I love is when you are there and you see other pilgrims that you walk for so many days and they start arriving, you see their faces and like you feel the arrival again. And
that feels like magic, doesn't it? You just think about somebody and all of a sudden they're there.
It's just incredible. It's like all the memories, it's like putting everything, the more intensified, condensed feeling in just that moment, that plaza, and the wall stops for a second.
Yeah, that's right. And it feels like, you've run through your list in your mind of all the people that matter. And I think we saw all of them in Santiago. We stayed a couple of days as well. And everybody was there, apart from there were two wonderful pilgrims who we absolutely adored, Stefano and Mike. And we didn't see them in Santiago. And because they'd been the most special Camino buddies for us, I was sad about that. And we went to Finisterre. We didn't walk to Finisterre. The next Camino, I'm walking to Finisterre. We took a bus to Finisterre, and we were sitting having lunch, and there we saw Stefano.
That's the beauty of the Camino that has, I heard so many stories of people after many Caminos losing someone, going to Santiago after 5 years and finding that person over there, or arriving in the same. There's just, the Camino has suspicious ways and networks and ways of working out, but it's incredible.
Yeah, it is really incredible. And absolutely, you're right to say stay a couple of days just to kind of soak it all up and to see those people and just give yourself a little bit of time to.
And in your case, suddenly the Camino becomes much more and it started growing there. Were you going to the Camino with the idea of writing something? Were you one of those persons that had a journal, or was something that was even in your mind?
No, I definitely didn't go thinking I was going to write a book for sure. But when we left, because we were going, because originally I was going on my own, and then it was just Ali and I. Our husbands were a little bit worried about us because we hadn't done anything like, we were like, I was 48 or something, and I hadn't done anything exciting in my life at all before, and not solo. So I said, no, I'm not taking a phone. I want this to be a really like a detox. I don't want to have to be answering messages. I want to just be on my own on the journey. my husband said, oh, I don't know if I'm very happy about the idea of not being in contact at all. So I said, well, how about I take a phone, but I don't use it at all. And then in the evening, I write a little blog post for Ali and I, so that you know where we are and that you can see that we're all right. And he said, okay, that will be fine. So I set up just a Facebook page for Ali and I, and every day I put some pictures and I wrote a little blog, and it kind of grew as we went until there were lots of people, it feels like the goodwill is pushing you forward. So my posts got a bit longer and longer as people were appreciating it. So by the time I came home, I think I had probably written about 40,000 words, which is quite a lot. Yeah. Excuse me a second.
Cool. That's incredible. For me, I'm one of those persons that I try to write about my Camino, but I'm more a visual or a talker. That's what I think it led me into the podcast. But you see all these people that at the end of the day, they go and they start writing. I'm like, I would love to do something like that, to get so deep. And I think also then writing is something that puts your thought into paper. You go to a deeper level of knowing, and I don't know how to explain it. It's just...
It does help you to... It definitely sort of crystallizes the experience, I think, when you're writing about it. And I only had my phone, so it was one finger
time consuming.
Yeah, at night. And then when I came back, a lot of people said, oh, well, I really enjoyed your posts, but you should do something with that. You should turn it into a book. And as I said, my mum died, and then we moved south. So a lot happened in that year. We moved from Scotland to London. And I was alone in London with time, because I'd given up my job. And I think I always knew I wanted to be. I was an English teacher, and I had always written. So I thought, well, maybe this is a good time to see if I can turn this into something more that's not a diary. And I was lucky enough to have a literary agent who was interested in it, and who put a lot of time into helping me sort of shape the manuscript. So she said to me, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm loving listening to all the stories about all the other Caminos, but I think you're really holding back, and your story of transformation is what we really want to read. And it was quite difficult, because I think I said to you before, I'm not really somebody who's been a great share. I haven't been a sharer. I haven't told people my story. I'm not, I'm quite reserved, and that was quite a difficult thing. I thought, well, do I really want to tell my own personal story? And then I thought, and then I felt like, well, the power of the Camino for me was transformative, and my story is not a true one unless I really talk about how that transformation was. So I did follow her advice and gave more of myself and my own story, and how the walk changed me. She kept saying, more. You're still holding back, more and more. By the end, I was relieved. It was enough. But it was, so it was it took a couple of years to really turn it from a diary into something that was much more about a woman at my stage of life, really figuring out how life changes when your children are no longer at home.
Because what was the purpose at the beginning of the writing the book? Was more like a personal journey? Was something that you really wanted to search with the ball, or was just that the whole situation?
I think that a number of people said that they, the story of being brave and doing something that really pushes you out of your comfort zone was inspiring to them, and so I thought, well, if I can do it, and I wasn't brave and I wasn't really fit or anything like that, then other people can do it too. So I think it is a bit like you said, if you do something that's wonderful, you want other people to share, to have the opportunity to have that experience too. So it was about encouraging other people to walk, and to know that there are ways that you can push yourself out of your comfort zone to really learn about yourself, and find out that there's more to you than you think.
I agree. I think right now, as we were talking at the beginning prior to the interview, the Camino is one of those places that prepares you and gives you place. In some cases, people go here after losing someone, and that gives you time to go back to normal life. People come to the Camino after they've been fired, they want to change their career. But one of the things that we see here, as our lifespan gets longer, and like one of the biggest, and as I was doing an MBA, and you see all these people that work as you were doing, day by day, and suddenly your life goes from I'm working 24/7, this big company, I'm the CEO, whatever, and suddenly one day you're out. You are who you are, no? And I love in your book that you say the question is no longer what do I want to do with the rest of my life. The question is who do I want to be, no?
Yeah.
And for so many people right now, who we are is the LinkedIn. I'm the CEO, I'm the whatever, I'm the father,
Yeah.
I'm the mother. But it comes to a point in your life that you are no longer that person. So
Yeah.
who do I want to be, no?
Yeah, it's all about doing. And society, tells us it's all about doing, but really it's all about being, isn't it? It's about who you are. It's not about what you do.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that and your book can help so many people. And there's the transition, no? And we are right now. It seems like the only transition is from from middle school to high school, from high school to college. College, you go to university, and then you are retired, and you are not supposed to have a life anymore. You're a grandma, you're whatever. But
yeah,
I think right now, and as you see in the Camino, like the other day, they were talking about the oldest pilgrim in the Camino, 96 years old. I'm like,
yeah, it's extraordinary.
there's an extra life that who knows, my generation, what are we going to retire or what we're going to be doing, but there is another life that it's scary for many people right now, because you go from being huge or something and suddenly what happened the next day.
I think it's really interesting what you say about transitions, because I think that transitions are sort of in many cultures, transitions are kind of marked. They're significant, and you kind of enter a slightly liminal space in a transition, that it gives you opportunities to sort of transform. And in some cultures, that sort of those transitions are celebrated. But like you say, we are very good at celebrating those transitions when they're all about youth, but we're not so good at sort of embracing that liminality, that sort of opportunity to access a kind of space that's different from our everyday life during the transition. It's not, we move from the mundane and the routine into something different, and in that transition we're given opportunities, and the Camino seems to be like a perfect way to celebrate that transition and actually occupy a space which is very different from the ordinary habitual place of our daily life.
And also, for me, as being an entrepreneur, a freelancer, I see that now that, everybody's successful, everybody, it's super happy. You are supposed to be happy. You're supposed to be successful. You're supposed to have a goal in your life. And suddenly you go to the Camino and you realize that, no, it's okay to be sad one day. It's okay not to know what you're going to be doing next day, or where you're going to be sleeping, or what you're going to eat, or whatever. And there's nothing, that's not a problem. You will figure it out. It's a journey, and it's not about, what is my next, if you're not the next step, just take one step at a time, and that's okay. Some days you will cry, some days you will be super happy, and that is life. But everything that we see nowadays is that, no, you are supposed to be happy, you're supposed to be successful, you're supposed to have goals in your life and achievement and blah blah blah.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And what if that really matters? It's very it's so wonderful on the Camino that all of that goes, you just shed it all, and you realize how trivial and inconsequential it is.
One of the things that I was reading when I was reading about your book and doing some research is like, I saw, what were people were saying about your book. And I love this quote that, someone that was a scientist and not Catholic, and they were saying how the kindness, the camera, the Camino. And in my Camino, I found that people that will ask me, I'm like, do you have faith? I'm like, yeah, I'm Catholic. And then they will be saying, oh, okay. And you start walking, and people's like, no, I go for the Camino for sport. I'm like, okay, you say whatever you want. Suddenly these days, we go to a church, and these German guys that were there, younger, 20 something, like, can we go to church with you? I'm like, will you translate for us? I'm like, yeah, are you Catholic or something? I'm like, no, we just want to be. I'm like, that's great. That's part of the Camino. If I go to Asia, I will go to a Buddhist temple or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the last days in the Camino, was this friend from Italy that he went to the cathedral like 3 or 4 times, and I asked him why, and he's like, I don't know. No, what is with the Camino, with your book, that can put all that into people and invite them to go and walk the Camino? How do you feel when someone talks like that about your book?
it feels it's been an incredibly joyful experience to connect with people who I have never met, far away on the other side of the world, and to know that they kind of get a little bit of that experience. We were talking about the kind of when people know they know, and the fact that they can get a little bit of that from the book is really really wonderful. I'm very glad that I've done it, that I've been able to share a little bit about the magic of the Camino with people. It's very rewarding, I would say.
Have your family, when you finished the book and everything right now, what do they say about your journey? Has anyone think, like, I need to go walk the Camino? Your friends, your college?
All the time, people say to me, I'm going to do it. I'm definitely going to do it. My neighbor, the lady that lives just right there, she's going next week. She and some friends are going, and that's wonderful. It's like the sort of pyramid. If one person can make two other people go, that feels like a job done.
And one of the big questions, and I know this is hard, and we're talking about, we don't share much about each other with other people, but how did the Camino change you? When you finished your Camino and you came back home, what did the people see? Anything different?
I think that when I came back, my kids were worried that I was so quiet. I think that they thought that I was down, and I wasn't down. I just felt so incredibly kind of grounded and sort of still when I came back, that they were like, they kept saying, "Are you okay, Mum? Are you okay?" Because some of the sort of frantic energy that I think I'd had before had kind of dissipated. I think that the Camino, when I was walking the Camino, I felt like a lot was resolved, and I felt I had I'd made a lot of progress with forgiveness, and I'd lost a lot of shame. That all felt like that was happening on the Camino. And now, sort of a few years later, I think what actually happened was, if I imagine that I had a kind of an armor, a kind of protective defenses that were keeping everything in and keeping me together. I think what the Camino did was sort of shed those defenses and made me much more open and vulnerable. But actually that then actually brought to the surface things that I thought were resolved, which actually I've spent the last couple of years really resolving. So it was the beginning of a process, I would say, rather than, like you say, it doesn't fix things. It gives you space, and a lot of things were raised that it has taken a few years to kind of continue that journey.
But that's the biggest discovery, when we walk the Camino thinking that Santiago is the place that the end, no? And then suddenly you arrive there and it's like, no, that's the real beginning of the real Camino.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm really interested to go back this year and to walk again and to see where that journey is going to take me this time. I think being open to whatever might come my way there is all I'm wishing for. I'm not setting an intention. I'm just walking with an open heart.
So what can people, if someone is going to read your book, what is going to find in your book? Is your book a guide? Is your book
it's
a memoir?
It's not a guide, no. I would say it's a sort of personal journey, and in that, when I hope I describe, I love, I'm a nature writer. I write poetry, so I hope there are beautiful descriptions of the landscape. But I think it's much more about an expression of my connection with that landscape and how that became transformative to me. So there's a lot of my backstory and a description of that unraveling or that unburdening that happens on the walk. Shall I read you what it says on the back? Yes. So on the back it says, it's when faced with an empty nest, Carrie decides to spread her own wings. Giving up a job she loves, she sets off to walk across a country, a big one. A contemporary take on an ancient experience, Pilgrim is an entertaining and moving memoir of her 900-kilometer walk to Santiago de Compostela. In classic Pilgrim fashion, she meets and befriends an array of companions along the way, united by a common sincerity of purpose. Battling through sun and snow, mud and mountains, blisters and bedbugs, her real destination turns out to be deep peace. And I think
that's what we are looking for now in life.
Yeah.
Deep peace with yourself, with everyone, and
yeah,
So if you can give, some kind of balance, one of the what I love is that when you say no, the question is who I don't want to be. And I think many people don't know, and it's okay. It's okay not to know, and it's okay. A while ago there was this singer that sang in American Got Talent. I don't know if you saw that. She was like 20 and she passed away with cancer. And her song was it's okay. It's okay not to know. It's
Yeah.
okay not to be happy. It's okay. And in your case, what kind of advice will you give to someone that is in the same situation that you were?
I think it's difficult. I was lucky. I was lucky in that I was able to stop work, and not everybody is in the position that they can do that. But in but doing something that challenges you and that puts you out of your comfort zone and that gives you time and space to just be with yourself, away from everything that defines you, away from the normal, from your family and your job and your own home, all the things that we think make us who we are. When you step off that, when you step away from that and allow yourself time to just be open to an experience, that's where you really start to think about who you are, without all the scaffolding that of our life, that is not always. Sometimes it's artificial, the things that we think make us who we are. I encourage anybody to, just, even if they can only do a week of it, just to start that journey, just to give themselves the gift of time and space.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. The gift of time, no? Something that right now it seems like it's running away and we're always running out, but it's the biggest gift that the Camino gives us: time to think and to get all those extra things that we put on ourselves away and throw them. And sometimes I always say that we give those to the pilgrims that walk with us, and we take something from there. And as we get to Santiago, we are so lighted. That's the beauty. Right now we all say the buen camino, but I always say to remind all the pilgrims, the old ultraya, to say, walk forward, but also walk higher to whatever you think is higher. But and that's the beauty of the Camino. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for opening your house, your heart, and your book to all of us. I invite everybody to go and book your book. We will put all the links on the footnotes of the program, and we'll invite everyone to discover. And if they have any questions, to contact you, on social media, on Instagram, and Facebook, or through your website and your blog, and to read the beautiful poetry that you have there, and to discover the Camino. And as you say, if we can, with this interview, we just help someone to go ahead and walk the Camino, I bet that in a couple of years, this will be a better world. Thank you so much.
Thank
Buen
you.
camino, Ultraya.
Ultraya.